and welcome back to my channel. It's Casey McKenzie. I am an author of mostly urban fantasy, but also some paranormal, cozy mystery, science fiction, fantasy in general, and working on a romantic mystery proposal right now for my agent. As a follow-up to my video last week on what new writers can learn from the Aja Winter / Age of Scorpius situation, I wanted to sit down and have us examine an older project of mine. If I were coming at this now with the perspective I have now, how would I edit this project that I started when I was much younger, and taking my skills that I've learned since I first worked on it, how would I edit it, and then when would I reach that realization that perhaps this is not the best use of my time and maybe I should just put this project to rest and keep working on other things. There's a process to that decision, and it's going to be individual from author to author, but I just thought I would walk us through some of my thought process. Now, first of all, this project was originally called The Vessel. It's kind of a goddess avatar project. It's an urban fantasy featuring witches and the Morrigan from Celtic mythology. And so The Vessel is kind of bland and generic. So later I came back on one of my mini editing phases that I've already done of this and ended up changing the name to Vessel of Dreams. This project, I probably started brainstorming and really working on it probably in my late teens, early 20s. And then I got very serious about trying to get published in my late 20s, and then ended up getting my agent and book deal in my early 30s. So this was spanning a long period of time, and it holds a special place in my heart because it was the first project where I got really serious about getting published as an adult. And it wasn't, I think I originally envisioned it as a YA, but the main character starts out, originally I was having her start out when she was 18. I think in this edited version I came back later and aged her up a bit to make it more like a new adult book. But all of that said, I queried a few agents with this, but then I realized that there was just a lot of problems with it, and so I took everything that I had learned from writing this book and then I applied it to the next couple of books. The second project I worked on, I queried it a little bit more widely, and then the third project I worked on queried a little more widely. I'm trying to remember because I think it was the fourth book that I ended up getting the agent, but maybe it was the third. I'll have to go back later and check that. But long story short, everything I learned from writing this is not a waste. But we're going to go ahead and jump into how would I edit this if I was coming back today. And the opening, so this opening is not the original opening. The original opening, I opened with a dream. And that is a really stereotypical way for a lot of new writers to open their projects, especially it was a prologue, and prologues can be also a little bit of a stereotype for new writers because a lot of the time what we're doing is we're starting it in a different spot than where the actual story begins, and we want to get this flashback, that information, we want to introduce it into the story, but it will often serve us well to wait later and piece that information in and layer it in as it becomes relevant. Because really, I think I mentioned this in the video last week, you really want to introduce the readers quickly to your characters, or at least one of your characters, however many is in the scene, and the story. Like, you really want to get them in, you want to grip them with action if possible and get them emotionally invested, and then later they're going to be along for the ride and they're going to sit a little bit more for the world building and the layering and of everything else that you need to add in. So I decided to nix that dream in the beginning, and there are going to be spoilers out the wazoo for this because I do not plan to ever publish this, and if I do decide to do that, I'm going to take it apart, start over again, take the premise and maybe some of the characters, maybe even create new characters and just start over. But odds are I have so many other really better ideas that I'm not going to do this at all. So anyway, you're going to be spoiled, but it's never going to get published, so it doesn't really matter. Brienne is the main character, and just as a quick context, since we're not going to be editing too much in one sitting, she is a young woman who has been orphaned, newly orphaned. She, like I said in the original version, she was like 18, getting ready to start college. I think I aged her up a couple of years now. She might be like a junior in college. Maybe we'll discover as we go on. But her parents have both died in a mysterious car accident recently. And in this scene, she's waking up in her family manor she starts out in St. Louis, which is where her parents raised her. But we're back now at her family manor in Massachusetts. And she never knew that she even had any living family members, because as far as she knew, her parents didn't have any family. So that's just the basic premise to get us started. Now, this new opening, I don't find it's more compelling than the dream, I suppose, but the writing's not great. This was me early on, and we could start in a better place. But let's just take a surface level edit of it right now. Brianna didn't know what woke her. One moment she was enjoying a peaceful dream. The next she was blinking away sleep. She glanced at the bedside clock and noticed that it was well after 8 p.m. She had napped far longer than planned. Brianna rolled out of bed when her stomach rumbled loudly. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten. Brianna found her way to the kitchen with only one wrong turn. Tempting scents wafted from the oven. She wasted no time in serving herself a generous portion of mouth-watering lasagna. Smells almost as good as Mom's. She swallowed the lump in her throat and dug into the first home-cooked meal since her parents' accident. She had not inherited her mother's flair in the kitchen. Brianna ran her hands over the scarred oak table, wondering if her mother had eaten at that very spot. Generations of her ancestors had inhabited this home, raising families and growing old one after the other. I should have grown up eating at this table, for holidays if nothing else. She clenched her hands atop the table as she fought back resentment. Years of hearing about her friends' family histories and yearning to know about her own had birthed an insatiable thirst for family roots inside her. Her parents' refusal to discuss their own history only made it worse. Just what had they been trying to hide all this time? It didn't make a lick of sense. I'm going to pause right here to give my initial thoughts as I'm rereading this. And I think it's stronger than when I had it opening with the dream. We're kind of quickly introducing the fact that she's lost her parents. She's kind of dealing with some of the emotions from that. But it's reading info dumpy to me. And it's not very active because she's not interacting with someone. Right now, it's a lot of like floating head syndrome where she's just thinking to herself. And I have her talking out loud just to have some dialogue in here. But if I were going to revisit this now with the goal of writing it for other people and maybe publishing it, I would probably scrap this scene altogether. I think one of the earlier edits that I did of this, I had her driving up to the manor, so she was like in a chauffeured limousine because her aunt is very wealthy. Her Aunt Carrie is basically one of the main antagonists of this story. The other thing that Brianna does not know is that she's a witch. She's descended from witches. Her mother was a witch. She doesn't know that. And so I had her driving up to this family manor. It's basically kind of like an Addams Family type. It was a big manor, mysterious, a little spooky. But again, it was one of those things where it just didn't felt right. So I think if I were going to start this today, I would probably have her starting to where she meets up with Riley, her cousin, who's Carrie's daughter. Riley is probably honestly, if I were going to redo this today, I would probably write it from Riley's perspective, because Brianna's a little bit of a like goody two-shoe. There's nothing wrong with that, but she's like the perfect golden child. She's a little Mary Sue-ish. She's the one who is the avatar, the vessel of dreams for the Morgan. And Riley is the one who's like snarky and sassy and like a little bit of a rebel and stands as like a foil against her mother, who's the antagonist. And that's kind of more of the main characters that I gravitate toward and who I write now. So if I were going to do this now, I probably would start maybe in this scene. I would probably have a short build up to it, where I may be introducing a little bit, very little bit of grounding in where we're at so that the reader isn't like completely confused. And then I would just start right in with the banter between Riley and Brianna. And probably help establish like the fact that Riley and her mother do not get along. Here's a little bit of grounding where she's like, hey, this is just like my dream. So one of the other things is not only was she having a dream about her parents and their death in the original version, but she also has dreams throughout the whole book because she is the avatar for the Morrigan, and so that's just kind of something that keeps happening to her. And so when she gets here, she's like, oh my gosh, this is like just like the dream I've been having. And so it's kind of like when I was first layering in the fact that she doesn't know it, but we, the reader, might pick up on that like these dreams are not just dreams, like she's having visions. So here's where we introduce Riley. I wouldn't touch that if I were you. Brianna spun. A shadowy figure stood in the doorway. The voice was female, but neither her aunts nor the housekeepers. That left one logical possibility. Riley? The one and only. You must be the infamous Brianna. Something in her cousin's voice put her on edge. She sounded anything but welcoming. Brianna sauntered forward. Nice to know my reputation precedes me. Riley laughed. Touché, cousin. Come on back to the light so we can actually see. I'm not going to read through all of this, but this is one of those scenes where you're like over describing like how people look. There's kind of a purpose to it in this story because this might sound convoluted trying to explain it, but the way that these different women in the family look will become story relevant later. I'm not going to try and explain it now because it will sound convoluted, but there was a reason for it. But I just don't think that I would waste time in the beginning when you're trying to grip the reader in by spending all this time on this description that just doesn't really matter. I would probably just maybe do a line here or there. But anyway, let's keep going for the purpose of not getting too bogged down in all the details. Riley dressed nothing like her mother either. Her flowy skirt and low-cut fitted bodice reminded Brianna of something from another century. So, you're my long-lost cousin. And you're Carrie's beloved daughter. Riley's eyes, so much like her own, narrowed. She took a step forward, then stopped and laughed. Definitely a Callahan. I think I might like you. Brianna allowed herself to relax. Well, maybe I'll like you too. Riley sobered. Since I just might end up liking you, I'll give you a friendly piece of advice. If you want to have a pleasant visit while you're here, don't go past this room if you get the urge to explore. In fact, I recommend avoiding the 3rd floor entirely. Brianna tried to decide if Riley was being belligerent or meant her warning sincerely. Are there ghosts in the attic, she joked. Perhaps, but I would be much more concerned with the skeletons in the closet if I were you. Shivers ran along Brianna's spine. I came to explore my roots, not dig up skeletons. Noise filtered up the stairs. Riley stiffened, a frown replacing her smile. Oh, wonderful, she muttered. Her Highness is home. She jerked a finger toward the stairs. Brianna took the hint and scurried down. She turned to bid her cousin good night, but was met with the click of Riley's door. Brianna shook her head. Not exactly the warm fuzzies she'd been hoping for. Oh well, there's always tomorrow. So I'll pause again and kind of give some of my thoughts as I'm reading through this. I can tell that this is one of my first novels. I write pretty clean. There's nothing like majorly grammatically wrong with this, unless I'm missing a typo here and there, but overall nothing dramatically wrong. We're now into a little bit of the action. We're into the interplay, the banter. I'm much better at writing dialogue now than I used to be, and if I were writing now, I would sharpen this up tremendously. One of the ways that I actually found my true writing voice was switching from writing in 3rd person to writing in 1st person, which was very common in urban fantasy, especially in the early to mid 2000s when it first started hitting really big. And obviously today it's still pretty popular, but there was a lot of 1st person POV, and it really helps draw you into that character's voice. And when I switched from 3rd person to 1st person, and especially in the perspective of my main character in my first published book, which is Red Hot Fury, part of the Shades of Fury series from Penguin Random House under their Ace Books imprint. Obviously, I'm giving myself a plug, but I'm also just saying that in case you want to go and look it up. You can even read a few pages, I think, for free, probably via an Amazon preview, or maybe one of the other vendors does that too. I might even have some of it on my website. I'd have to go look. But if you want to read like the first few pages of that to get an idea of what I mean, like the voice in that one is so much stronger, and that's really when I found myself as a writer. Now I can apply that even to when I'm writing 3rd person. It doesn't always have to be 1st person, but that's just kind of what clicked for me. So I would come back, I would sharpen all this up. I would make it more interesting, more compelling, and if I were going to do that and I was going to do this scene, that's what I would do. I I don't think if I were going to do it that I would have this exact scene, but maybe something like that. So anyway, the next scene moves into Riley is basically kind of thinking about the confrontation with Brianna. So her mother basically, like I said, is the antagonist. She's basically a villain. She's ultimately responsible for the death of Brianna's parents. Like I said, I'm going to spoil because we're just doing this to learn and kind of figure out the process of like plotting and editing and like deciding if a story's worth going on with. Carrie is the aunt, Riley's mother. She is basically responsible for Brianna's parents dying. Brianna doesn't know that. Carrie has been waiting a long time for the avatar who's called the vessel of the goddess, and she wanted basically to control that person. So she wanted the power. If it wasn't going to be her, she wanted control and power over that. And her mother, which is also Brianna's and Riley's grandmother, and I can't remember the name of the character now. we'll see it later if we keep doing these episodes. That mother and then Brianna's mother figured out what was going on. She ended up wanting control over the vessel. So her mother and Brianna's mother took Brianna away and made sure she was somewhere where nobody could find her. So this scene, I don't think Riley knows everything, but she definitely knows that her mother's up to no good and that her mother has done some bad, evil things. Riley stretched as she made her way across the bed. Oh, I guess I should start at the actual very beginning of the scene. Riley closed her bedroom door and leaned back, frowning as she considered this newest piece to the puzzle. Her cousin's arrival could change everything. She just hoped this latest change would not bring about disaster. Riley stretched as she made her way across the bedroom. She stopped at the oversized desk to feed her tropical fish, relieved to find all 8 survivors still surviving. She didn't have the best track record with pets, and an even worse record when it came to plants. She counted herself lucky that half of the fish her friends had given her the month before hadn't yet become flesh fodder. Riley laughed as she thought about Sloane's less than diplomatic way of describing the 8 other fish that had already passed into the hereafter. Her friend was certainly not known for possessing a great deal of tact. Now, I'm going to pause here, and what immediately jumps out to me here is like I'm having another floating head thing where what would be more interesting is if I had Sloane and Riley in a scene interacting and Riley stops to feed the fish and then maybe Sloane gives a little dig about her fish tending to become flesh fodder, and then having them like banter back and forth and discuss things rather than Riley just being here kind of like thinking and talking to herself. So if I were going to rewrite this scene, I would do something like that. If I decided it was necessary. It may be that this scene is not even necessary. You know what? Part of this scene is maybe a little bit necessary, or it's a little bit more important than I was thinking. Riley is an artist, a talented artist, and the way her gift of seeing the future kind of manifests for her is she sees these images in her head and she paints them out. And so I think the main point I had of this scene was she was painting something that she foresaw. Let's just read through it and discover as we go. The expenditure of magical energy paired with unease over her cousin's presence acted as a catalyst. Sight hammered against her senses with primal force. For one moment, she struggled against the wild magic pulsing through her body. She didn't want to see images of what might be. As always, however, struggling only gained her a pounding head and shaking hands. Muttering an oath, she stalked across the room. Riley snatched up brush and palette and confronted the blank canvas on her easel. She took a deep, calming breath and then lost herself to the sight. Another quick comment. One of the things I think that especially fantasy writers are prone to doing is capitalizing a lot of things that may or may not need to be capitalized. I think I capitalized C up here too. Obviously, I was capitalizing them because she's not just seeing normal things with her eyes. There it is. She's seeing the future. And then this is not just regular sight. It's the sight, as in the sixth sense that you're seeing the future. So it's possible I might keep that in that way later, but just something to be aware of when you're writing fantasy is we do tend to overdo that a little bit sometimes, especially when we're new. Sometimes even when you're not new. I probably still do that sometimes too much. To Time passed in a feverish haze. Conscious thought had nothing to do with the frenzied strokes of color she slashed across the canvas. 1 hour slipped into several. As her frantic efforts finally assuaged the sight's demands, sanity returned. She allowed both arms to drop to her sides and panted. She closed her eyes, not eager to look upon the fruit of her labor, yet she had ignored the sight before to her own detriment and to that of her father and grandmother. Curiosity got the better of her. She opened her eyes and looked at the now covered canvas. 3 women stared out from the painting, each possessing the same emerald eyes. She recognized the woman on the left as her mother, and the woman in the center, a younger version of Carrie, as Brianna. The figure on the right was the woman who had cared for Riley as a child when it became obvious her mother couldn't be bothered. Her grandmother, Moira Callahan. That's right, their grandmother's name is Moira. Riley shook her head to clear the lingering fog. Well, I didn't expect to see you in this vision, Mammo. Especially not standing opposite Mother. Shit, what does this mean? Now, here's just a comment from a world building perspective and staying sensitive to, like, when you're right. Technically speaking, I am Irish and Scottish and of the descent of that, but I have not been raised by anyone that speaks Irish Gaelic, so I think I looked this up, like, online, and Mammo, I think it was a way to say grandmother or mother. I would have to go and look it up now. I'm suspecting grandmother. But what I would do is if I were publishing this, if I were publishing myself, if it was one of my indie publishing projects, I would have someone come through here that's fluent in the Irish Gaelic and then let me know, like, yes, this works, no, it doesn't work. And then if it was going to go through a publisher, perhaps they would hire a sensitivity reader or somebody familiar with that to confirm it. It just depends on the process. But I did want to mention that, like, just be aware of that when you're writing. It's one thing if you're just writing for yourself, but when you're writing for publication, you really want to be sensitive that you're doing things correctly. And sensitively. Like, some people get all weird about that. Like, it does not hurt you to try and do things in a sensitive manner that's considerate of other people. That's all I'm saying. So Riley shook her head to clear the lingering fog. Well, I didn't expect to see you in this vision, Mammo. Especially not standing opposite Mother. Shit, what does this mean? Oh, you see, I capitalized vision. She regarded the painting more closely. Swirls of both light and dark energy danced among all 3 women, though they seemed heaviest around Brianna. I don't know why I said Brianna. Brianna's how I've been pronouncing it. Riley frowned. She moved her attention from Brianna to first Carrie and then Moira. It seemed as if the older women were actually afraid of the youngest. Just where in the puzzle do you fit, cousin? And can you be trusted? Or is the sight warning me not to trust you? Was it coincidence you found her way to the chest your first night here? Coincidence or destiny? After perusing the painting for any hints it might yield one last time, she turned away from the easel and started back toward her bedroom. For now, she would watch her cousin and wait. And should Brianna prove to be untrustworthy, well, Riley would deal with that when the time came. After all, in some ways, she was her mother's daughter. All right, I'm going to talk about something here that I think I'm actually doing well. I think in the earlier versions, I had Brianna and Riley having that little bit of like an altercation at the beginning, but after that, they kind of quickly just became BFFs. So here I think I was trying to layer in a little bit more complication where Riley actually foresees the fact that Brianna's the vessel, but she doesn't really know what that means. And she's not sure if she should trust her, like, especially when she's seeing her in conjunction with her mother and with her grandmother, like, what does this mean? Like, are you to be trusted? So I was trying to, like, layer that complication in here, and if I were coming back and doing this again, I would even layer that in. Like, we wouldn't just immediately have them jump to being BFFs. They haven't been raised together. They don't have a reason to trust each other yet. So I would make them work for that a little bit more. That's something you really want to do as a writer. Like, you don't want to make things just happen too coincidentally or too easily. You want to make your characters work for things. And that's how real life works. Like, even in a moment where maybe you do immediately feel drawn to someone, like, there's still going to be conflict and layers to that relationship. And when you're writing fiction, like, it's even more important to have that. Oh, it looks like that's... Oh, gosh. Did we make it through 2 chapters, or did I just... I bet I didn't I bet I just didn't renumber correctly. I'm like, we went through 2 chapters? Because I was going to just have us do 2 chapters. I think this is just not. not properly numbered. Yeah, this should be chapter 2. So that is a mistake. So look, we got to rewrite something. I haven't been rewriting lately because, not lately, I haven't been rewriting so much yet and editing because, like I said, I write very, very clean. This doesn't really need a line edit at the moment. What it needs is more of a developmental edit, and then we would get down to more of the line level later. For right now, like, I would just have to, like, rip this all apart and just put it back together again. So it's not so much a line edit that I would be concerned with as a developmental edit. Okay, here's another chapter. And if I were going to do this again, this is another floating head thing. Like, this is all stuff that it would be so much more interesting if I layered it in a different way. But, you know, we're going to edit these 2 chapters tonight, I think, and then call it for the night. But I want to read through it and then keep giving my thoughts, because I think that's going to be helpful for you, because you can take a lot of what I'm saying and apply it back to your own project. Like, if you have a project you want to go back and edit, just keep these things in mind as you're going back and looking at it. Brianna reclined on her window seat, surrounded by several photo boxes and albums. Sunlight filtered through the window, providing light as she dug through old family photographs. Each time she saw her mother, as a chubby-cheeked infant, dressed in an adorable little girl's sailor dress and hat, in a high school class photo, she fought back tears. Her mother had been so beautiful and so happy. One constant remained in each photograph, no matter when it had been taken. Her mother always wore a smile for those around her. Here's a little comment I'm going to make, too, about, like, avoiding overwriting and things like that. Like, you want to show, not tell. And sometimes telling is going to behoove you better than showing. Like, you shouldn't avoid it entirely. But in this case, I'm both telling that her mother's happy and also showing it. And part of that is that I'm in Brianna's POV, and that's actually the thought she had. But if I had to do this over again, I probably would end up deleting this and then just showing that she was always so happy. It's just something to think about, or redoing, maybe reworking this in some way. But to continue on, Brianna didn't expect to find any pictures of her father, so it was a pleasant surprise when she opened one of the photo albums and realized it was from her parents' wedding. Now, she has that thought because she didn't know that her parents had any family, and so she was assuming that maybe her father didn't even know her mother. Maybe her mother met her father in St. Louis. But now she's going to figure out, no, my father was also from this area. I don't know that she registers that consciously yet, but she would later. Brianna didn't sorry. She smiled down at the first picture, which showed her parents kneeling before a priest she didn't recognize. They looked so young and happy. She ran a finger over the picture, unable to hold back tears this time. Wiping away the worst of them, she flipped through the album. She recognized only 1 or 2 of the pictures. She remembered her mother had once told her that she had lost most of her wedding pictures. Now, here's a quick comment that I'm going to say from a craft perspective. I'm using she a lot through here. So when you're writing in third person, even when you're writing in first person too, you want to vary the way you're structuring things. You want to vary the way you're phrasing the sentences. You want to vary using the name interspersed with she, he, they, all of that. Sometimes those words are invisible, and so kind of like the word said can be invisible a lot of the time. You don't want to have weird dramatic overuse of dialogue tags to avoid saying said sometimes, but you also don't want to overuse things like she. And the fact that I have like wiping away the worst of them, she flipped through, she recognized only, she remembered her mother. I would just figure out a way to reword some of this if I were coming back from a line editing perspective. But since we're not line editing right now, we're not going to do it. I just wanted to mention it. She remembered her mother had once told her that she had lost most of her wedding pictures. Lost or left behind when she cut off contact with her family more than 20 years earlier. Dun dun dun. Brianna stopped partway through the album when she saw a picture showing her mother and a woman who could only be her mother, Brianna's grandmother. Brianna realized where both her mother and cousin Riley had gotten their red hair. And again, I'm focusing on the appearance here, but that's because it's going to become plot relevant later. But I might rethink about how I'm doing it if I were rewriting this. How sad, Brianna murmured. I don't even know my own grandmother's maiden name. Riley, a voice answered. Her maiden name was Moira Brianne Riley. Brianna looked up. You have a habit of sneaking up on me, she commented. Riley shrugged, leaning against the door jamb. Your door was partway open. Figured you heard me. Guess I was too focused on all this. Have you ever looked through these? Of course. I grew up looking at all that stuff. Of course you're used to all this stuff. So sorry to bore you, cuz. This is an example of me trying to have banter between them, but it's kind of sounding a little juvenile to me. So I would redo that. I would just make this banter sharper. I didn't mean it that way. Oh, look, I know this has all got to be really weird for you, but it's strange for me too. Hell, Mother didn't even tell me you existed until the day you got here. She didn't? That seems odd. Tell me about it. She said you called her up out of the blue after your parents died. Well, I guess it was out of the blue, but I'm surprised she didn't tell you about me. Riley shrugged. That's my mother for you. Anyway, if you really want to see something, you should check out Mammo's room. I barely managed to keep Her Highness from trashing all her things. Mammo? Our grandmother. Mammo is an Irish nickname like Grandma or Granny. Hey, look, I explained it there. I researched it in the past. I just couldn't remember now. I see. Why would your mother want to trash her stuff? Riley shifted from the doorway, closing the door behind her. I would reword that if I were doing a line of it. Riley shifted from the doorway, closing the door behind her and stepping closer. You have a lot to learn about my mother, cuz, but I expect you'll learn much the way I did, the hard way. You don't like her much, do you? Riley arched her brow. Can't pull anything over on you now, can I? If I was going to do a line edit, I would reword it like that. Can't pull anything over on you now, can I? Just because I'm not familiar with, how did you put it, all the family skeletons doesn't mean I'm stupid. Riley ran a hand through her hair. Sorry, I don't mean to take it out on you. Let's just leave the mom thing alone, shall we? Whatever. Can you answer something else then? Wariness entered Riley's eyes. Which? Why would your mother want to destroy anything of our grandmother's? Because they came to hate each other with a passion. But I thought my mother was the one estranged from the family. I assumed your mother got along well with their parents. Oh, my mother got along with Daddo, our grandfather, just fine. It was Mammo that saw through her charming ways, and I'm not surprised Mother fostered the impression that your mother hated her family. It's the story she's bandied about for years. I am surprised you didn't know the truth, however. How could I? My mother never told me about any of you. She never spoke about her family or her past much at all. Remember, I didn't even know her grandmother's name. That's right, you did say that. I just find that so difficult to believe. And why is that? Riley regarded her for a moment. Mammo never told my mother, but I assume your mother told you. Mammo corresponded with your mother from the day she left until the day she died. Dun dun dun. That's impossible. My parents told everyone their families were dead. I know now that Mother's family wasn't, but Aunt Carrie said, I told you. My mother didn't know. I won't argue with you, not when I could prove I'm telling the truth. She grabbed Brianna's arm and pulled her down the hall to the door next to her own bedroom. Riley murmured something under her breath and then opened the door. Brianna frowned. She could have sworn this door had been locked the night before. Riley yanked her inside the room and shut the door firmly. She murmured something else, making... Now see, here's a mistake. Making a gesture or making some gesture. I think I just didn't decide which way I wanted to go. We'll just go with a gesture. Making a gesture as she did so. Brianna wondered if the too tight corset was getting to her. The room seemed to be a shrine to everything Celtic. Hunter green paint covered the walls with several paintings that clearly depicted Irish views strategically placed here and there. The frames were works of art themselves. Celtic knotwork fashioned from sterling silver. Oh, you know what? You can tell that, you could tell my age here because I've got two spaces everywhere. If I were going back and line editing this, I would actually bother to delete those, but I'm not going to this time. Celtic knotwork fashioned from sterling silver. The furnishings and decorations blended in perfectly. Lovely oak woodwork and fabrics done in varying shades of green and silver. The knickknacks covering antique tables and shelves hung from the wall all had something to do with Ireland or the ancient Celts. Then Brianna's gaze fell on the bookcase next to the king-size bed, and her heart almost stopped. Leather-bound books covered the shelves, with family photos displayed in front of the books. There were dozens of photographs in frames that matched the ones on the walls, but that wasn't what shocked her. Some of the shelves contained nothing but pictures of her. Pictures of Brianna as an infant, her christening in St. Louis, her first communion, pictures of her in junior high, high school, and college, even a picture of her playing softball. Her nails dug furrows into her palms. I know how this must seem to you, Riley began. Bullshit, you don't have any idea how I feel right now. Hey, don't get pissed at me, Besides, Mamo and your mother had reasons for what they did. What sort of reasons justify lying to a little girl about her own family, or telling her that she has no other family, yet sending pictures of her back to her grandmother? Riley narrowed her eyes. Don't be naive, cuz. There are plenty of good reasons to keep such things secret, most especially when that little girl's life is in danger. There you go, being weird again. Who would want to hurt one ordinary little girl? Riley tried to inject a note of humor. There are plenty of skeletons in the closet that even I haven't dug up, but I do know that Mamo never did anything without a damn good reason. She fiddled with the ribbon on her corset top. I have to meet some friends. Before I go, there's something you should see. Brianna followed her cousin across the room to the walk-in closet. Riley opened it, rummaged inside, and dragged out a large wooden chest. For one crazy moment, Brianna thought it was the chest from her nightmares. That impression was brief, however, because intricate Celtic knotwork covered the top and sides of the chest. Brianna sighed in relief. The chest in her dreams had been stark in its simplicity. This would make more sense if we had seen the chest earlier, but she keeps dreaming about a chest. And inside the chest is an actual vessel. And that becomes more plot relevant later. But it's also a physical manifestation that kind of corresponds to her being the figurative vessel. Riley murmured something once more, causing Brianna to glance at her with a raised eyebrow. This time, at least, her cousin also used a key to open the lock. So this is kind of showing how, she's confused by what happened earlier, but it's cluing the reader into the fact that Riley opened that without using a lock because she was using magic. The chest opened without a creak, indicating it was well oiled. Riley had obviously been very fond of their grandmother. Brianna found it difficult to think of her by the Irish term of endearment. Mamo just seemed too weird. That was more, I'm not calling Mamo weird. It seems weird to Brianna because she wasn't raised to think of her like that. And she wasn't raised with her as much of her heritage as Riley has been. So that's what that's trying to, illustrate there. Riley gestured at the chest. I usually keep these someplace else, but I thought you might like to read them. Just let me know when you're finished so I can give them back, put them back with Mamo's other treasured items. She glanced at her watch. Now I really do need to go. Just be sure and shut the door behind you when you leave. Brianna nodded but kept her eyes glued on the chest. Dozens of envelopes filled its interior. Her heartbeat quickened. See you later, and thanks. Riley slipped from the room without another word. Brianna reached into the chest and retrieved one of the twine-wrapped bundles. She recognized the handwriting immediately. It was her mother's. The postmark was from a few years previous. She took out bundle after bundle and placed them in chronological order on the floor. When she finished, nearly 24 bundles surrounded her. Each stack seemed to span roughly a year. Brianna unwrapped the first bundle and began reading. Mathair. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. It's been some days since I dared write you. Patrick and I feared someone followed us to New York. Such terror we went through the few days we were there. Finally, we decided it was safer to put more distance between Boston and ourselves, so we caught a bus to, perhaps I shouldn't tell you, lest it make it easier for anyone to track us down. A couple things I'm going to say. This was obviously over 20 years in the past, but lest it make it easier, that's a little archaic and old-fashioned. This would make more sense if it was 20 years earlier of 20 years ago. I would probably modernize that a bit. I don't know that I would... Mamo's fine. I don't know that I would go with mother. I think I would just say mother or mom. Sometimes you try to put a little bit of flavor. This is obviously kind of a little bit of a love letter to my Irish heritage that I wish I was more in touch with. But sometimes you don't want to overdo stuff like that. Especially when you're writing it for an American audience. I don't want it to come off as pretentious. Let's keep going. The baby is a true joy. Such a strange, solemn child, and yet very sweet all the time. Very sweet all the same. She's a tiny thing. I still haven't adjusted to the thought of being her mother, and yet I truly love her with every fiber of my being. Finally, I understand what you felt for all your children. Brianna smiled. The first paragraph seemed odd, but she felt her mother's love flow through the second. Oh, I think I just remembered what I actually changed the plot to. I'm not going to tell you that now. We'll discover it as we go. I regret leaving without saying anything to Gavin or Gabe. I even regret not telling Carrie goodbye. Even after all she has done, I know that you were the only one we can trust with the baby's life, but I just wish... Well, never mind that. I understand why we had to do this, for the baby's sake, but knowing I may never see you again is a hard cross to bear. I must close this for now. Our bus will be leaving the station shortly, and I want to mail this before we leave. I addressed this to the post office number you gave me and set the protections you showed me. Patrick was uneasy, being the Catholic he is, but he understands what we are up against. True that I am more Christian than witch these days, but I do remember what you taught me, and I honor the old ways. Brianna slipped the letter into its envelope. She turned it over and looked at the postmark. Savannah, Georgia. Quite a long way from New York and St. Louis. She wondered what had terrified her parents so much they ran from their home without saying goodbye. She heard footsteps and voices downstairs. Her aunt was home. While she didn't distrust Carrie like her daughter did, neither would she feel comfortable being discovered in her late grandmother's bedroom. Brianna dumped the bundles into the trunk and shoved it back inside the closet. She tiptoed across the room and listened for footsteps. Feeling foolish, she shut the door behind her as Riley had instructed. She made it to the door of her bedroom just as Carrie's voice floated upstairs. Brianna, darling, are you still home? I want you to meet someone. Brianna found Carrie sitting in the family room. A man whose face she couldn't see lounged in a chair across from her aunt. Carrie glanced up when she entered the room. Ah, Brianna, please come meet Braden Fitzgerald. The man stood and turned to face her. Brianna nearly skipped a step. The man was downright delicious. Dark black hair that refused to lay straight framed his dark-skinned face. Especially dark brown eyes regarded her as she approached. He dressed in black from head to toe, relieved only by a silver pennant around his neck. Here's a brief editing note. I would not use the word dark so much through here, but I would definitely reword that to not be repeating it so much. He dressed in black from head to toe, relieved only by a silver pennant around his neck. A pleasure to meet you at last, Brianna. May I say that you are every bit as lovely as your aunt. Brianna found herself blushing, and that realization embarrassed her even further. I thank you, she managed. Carrie laughed, a soft, knowing sound. Don't let his good looks fool you, darling. He's no angel. Braden joined in her laughter. Perish the thought, woman. Brianna relaxed. Their banter reminded her of her parents. Braden's an old friend of mine. Friend, perhaps, and lover, no doubt. It was obvious in the way they spoke and the way they looked at each other. Not too old, he quipped. Don't forget which of us is the younger. As if you would ever let me. Braden moved to sit next to Carrie, who motioned for Brianna to claim his vacated seat. Brianna complied, for the moment forgetting the seeds of doubt that Riley and her own mother's letters had planted in her mind. Her aunt may have been different from Megan in many ways, but in some ways so alike it made Brianna ache. How are you enjoying Massachusetts so far, Brianna? She focused her attention on Braden's words. I like it a lot so far. Marblehead's just gorgeous, and Carrie took me into Boston the other day, and what a pretty city. Ah, yes, Carrie does enjoy her shopping. I'm glad she's found someone to keep her company since Riley doesn't seem interested. Carrie broke in. Yes, Brianna's quite the shopping companion. She's a lot more hesitant about spending money than I am, however. Braden chuckled. Why do I have no trouble picturing that as truth? Carrie punched him in the arm. Watch it. I shop for you a good deal of the time. Rubbing his arm, he replied, Forgive me, oh mistress. He returned his attention to Brianna. Carrie tells me you just finished your first year of college. Do you have a major yet? The three passed a pleasant hour in conversation, mostly about Brianna's future plans. Carrie seemed particularly interested, hinting several times that she would be pleased if Brianna stayed at the manor indefinitely. Oh, damn, Carrie said after glancing at her watch. Braden, love, we really do need to be going. We have to meet Anthony to finish planning the memorial service. Memorial service? Brianna ventured. Aye, Carrie sighed. It's been nearly a year since the accident which claimed my husband and mother. Dun, dun, dun. So there's a history of accidents around this family recently. Brianna shivered at the coincidence of Carrie and Riley losing two loved ones months before Brianna lost her parents. I didn't need to do the dun-dun-dun moment. We have the character realizing the same thing I just dun-dun-dunned about. Sorry. Are you cold, darling? I can turn down the air. I'm fine, Aunt Carrie. Just tired. I think I'm going to take a nap. Hope you both have a good evening. Carrie smiled, standing to hug her. Oh, by the way, Brianna, we'll be having a little family get-together in your honor on Saturday. Gavin's been busy getting his brood organized for the new school year, and Gabe's been globe-trotting as usual. Everyone's finally in town now and available. I thought I'd let you know so you could brace yourself to meet the entire clan. As a quick aside, Gabe and Gavin are the two brothers of the family, just like Carrie and her sister Megan, who is Brianna's mother, were the sisters. I don't think I've actually said that up to date because of all the rewriting I've done. So if I were going back and rewriting this, I would probably establish that some way within the text so that readers aren't confused. Thanks for the warning, and thank you for going to all this trouble. Oh, no trouble. Sorry. Oh, no trouble at all. I think I was going again for, like, flavor in the writing, but if I were going back through this, I would just probably do this. Oh, no trouble at all. Now then, we must be off. I wish you vivid dreams, Brianna. Sleep well. What an odd comment. Vivid dreams. Brianna bid both Carrie and Braden good night and hurried upstairs. Sometimes her aunt seemed almost as weird as her cousin. Almost. Where are you off to today? Riley yelped. For the love of, don't sneak up on me like that. Brianna couldn't resist a smirk. What's wrong, cuz? Can't take your own medicine? Ha ha, very funny. What are you doing lurking in the hall anyway? I was just going to grandmother's room to read some more letters, but I could be persuaded to do that another day. Brianna kept her voice casual. She didn't want to give Riley the impression that she was needy, but she really wanted the chance to get to know her cousin better. She'd also like to learn more about their grandmother and the circumstances behind her accident. Something Riley said when they first met echoed in her mind. This family seemed to have more than its fair share of skeletons in the closet. What were the odds that both Moira and Megan would die in car accidents mere months apart? She expected Riley to deliberately ignore the hint, so was surprised to hear, I'm not sure if you'll find where I'm off to interesting, but you're welcome to join me, I suppose. Brianna grinned. Never let it be said that Riley didn't make you work for it. I'll grace you with my presence today, then. Ooh, lucky me. Moments later, they were seated in Riley's convertible, top down and music blaring as they headed toward the city. Riley seemed in no mood for small talk, and the wind rushing in their ears would have made conversation hard anyway. Brianna entertained herself by gazing at the passing scenery. Everything here seemed bigger, busier, and more crowded. Sometimes it made her wish for the familiar sights of St. Louis, and other times, like now, it thrilled her to be in the midst of such an exciting place. The worst of rush hour traffic had ended an hour or two earlier, but almost an hour passed before Riley pulled into a parking garage and shut the car off. Last chance to back out of boredom. Brianna shrugged. I'm game if you're game. Remember, I'm the one from the sticks. Riley laughed. Damn, I was saving that insult for later. Come on then, the first shop should be open by now. Brianna perked up. Brayden must have been wrong when he said Riley didn't care for shopping. Finally, something she and her cousin could find common ground on. Turned out Riley's idea of shopping and her own were polar opposites. Brianna preferred to shop for clothes, music, or books. Riley, on the other hand, seemed to enjoy stopping at the tiniest, strangest, most out-of-the-way shops Brianna had ever seen. There was no rhyme or reason to the stores she chose or what she browsed through. Neither did there seem to be a pattern to the purchases she made. A strange-looking trinket box at one shop, a package of incense at another, herbs that sounded bizarre to Brianna from still another shop. By the seventh such stop, Brianna gave up trying to understand and simply enjoyed the lovely day and the unique atmosphere of Harvard Square. After grabbing lunch from a sidewalk vendor, they approached a store more Brianna's speed, one filled with books. The battered sign hanging above the door read, Days of Yore. Upon stepping inside, she saw that the decor was unlike any she had seen in a bookstore before. Bright colors and bold prints clashed with mismatched bookshelves and the chairs and tables strewn about the room. Everything seemed to have fantasy or medieval elements to it. A picture of an emerald-scaled dragon, a tapestry depicting fairies frolicking in the woods, and strangest yet, another tapestry of a woman who, upon first glance, appeared to be alone, but on second glance appeared to be joined to two other women with similar features. Something about the tapestry drew her closer. Riley didn't notice when Brianna left her side. The closer she got to the tapestry, the clearer the three separate images became. 3 in 1, like a play on the Holy Trinity. The image in the middle was garbed as a warrior with golden hair, clear blue eyes, and a maternal air. She smiled calmly, a sword in one hand and what appeared to be a sprig of leaves in the other. At her feet lay a slain serpent. The image on the left appeared younger than the first. She had deep red hair and eyes as green as Brianna's. Youth and vitality seemed to flow from her as she laughed in the picture. She was dressed in pure white and held what appeared to be a small loom in one hand, a harp in the other, and at her feet a fire burned brightly. Brianna's gaze passed to the figure on the right, and a thrill of fear washed along her skin. This woman also smiled, but it was a terrible expression. Her hair was black as night, black as her eyes, which reflected cruelty. A crow hovered in the background, and a wolf lounged at her feet. One of her hands rested on the wolf's head. The other, in that hand she held a man's severed head, blood gushing to the ground. All three of the women affected Brianna, but the third actually scared her. She shook her head and backed away from the picture. Wanting to push the image of that picture from her mind, she stepped to the nearest bookcase and began browsing. A moment later, it all began to click. The fantastical decor, the bohemian atmosphere, the other stores that had been similarly offbeat. Riley followed the old ways. Brianna studied the book in her hand. Paths and Paganism, a guide to ancient practices. If I were, here's a quick note. If I were coming back and editing this now, I would probably put her reading that title before having it all start to click. Because to me, that's a much more clear clue that Riley follows the old ways. And it's a little bit too coincidental if she hadn't read that title for her to make that realization the second before she read the title. So that's just something I would do if I were rewriting this now. She had done some basic research on paganism and Wicca after coming across her mother's grimoire. Grimoire? I honestly don't know how you properly say that out loud. I've only ever seen it written, I think. Grimoire? I'm going to go look that up and then edit this, I think. After coming across her mother's Book of Shadows, we're going to cheat. Having met her aunt and cousin, she found herself curious to learn more. Brianna spent the next half hour searching for more advanced books and managed to uncover 3 promising candidates before Riley reappeared carrying several books of her own. Riley arched her brow at the books in Brianna's arms, but said nothing. She led the way to the counter in the front of the store. The cashier appeared from a doorway behind the counter, setting a beaded curtain jingling. She and Riley chatted as she rang up Riley's books. Brianna tried to follow their conversation, but soon gave up. She paged through her books as she waited. New to the path? The cashier asked the question twice before Brianna realized it was directed to her. Sorry, what? The woman laughed. I'm used to folks with their heads in the clouds around here. I asked if you were new to the path. Brianna noticed that Riley now watched her with as much interest as the cashier. I am interested in learning more about the path. I wouldn't say that I was following it or anything. The woman seemed unperturbed by her admission. Since you're here with Riley, I'm sure she can answer any questions you may have. Here, let me ring them up for you. Brianna handed over the book, sneaking another glance at Riley. Her cousin appeared more thoughtful than anything else. Are you sure these are the books you want to read? These are geared more toward the beginning practitioner than those simply wishing to learn more about the path. Brianna glanced back to the cashier. I've done some research on the history of paganism and Wicca in particular. I'm interested in learning more about the actual practice. Well, in that case, these should be right up your alley. My name is Della, by the way. I own this old place. Brianna smiled. Della seemed quite a contrast to Riley. Friendly, open, and carefree. Somewhere between her cousin and aunt in age, she appeared intriguing rather than beautiful. I'm Brianna McCrae, Riley's cousin. Della's lips quirked. I suspected as much. The family resemblance is strong. Brianna blinked. The only features she and Riley had in common were their green eyes. Maybe she means my resemblance to Aunt Carrie, although Della doesn't really seem the sort Carrie would hang out with. She's too much like Riley. Before she could ask Della what she meant, Riley said something that had the two going off on another tangent. Several minutes later, Della finished bagging Brianna's books. She smiled as she handed the bag across the counter. Brianna, if ever you need any assistance that Riley can't provide, please feel free to seek me out. That's nice of you, assuming that Riley doesn't actually know everything there is to know. Hearty har har. Riley's smile belied her sour tone. Della chuckled. No comment. I hope to see you both again soon. Blessed be. Riley seemed surprised when Brianna made the proper response at time with her. Blessed be. I don't even know why that she would be, because blessed be is pretty common. Like, a lot of people have heard that saying, even if they don't follow the path themselves. So I don't know. These are just things I would keep in mind if I was coming back through and editing this. They returned to the car in silence. Brianna wanted to focus on the positive vibes she had felt when talking with Della, but found her thoughts straying. No matter what she tried, images of the disturbing portrait she had seen, most particularly the bloodthirsty figure on the right, flitted through her mind, and each time she recalled that cold smile, she shivered inside. She couldn't quite shake the feeling that the portrait had something to do with her past and her future. Don't be stupid, it was just a picture. Some inner demon countered that statement with, yes, just a picture, like your dreams are really just dreams. Now, one thing I will say here, this could be a nice, sinister way to end this chapter, but I don't think we've really emphasized that Brianna has actually started to suspect that her dreams are more than just dreams. So this is something I would keep in mind as I was coming back through and doing another editing pass. All right, I think we're going to end this little editing session here. I hope that some of what I said and like the way that I'm approaching thinking about this and some of the little tips that I gave will help you as you start editing. And if you found this helpful and you enjoyed it, please go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe, and maybe even leave a comment saying what your thoughts are, like how you approach edits, what you think about the whole process, what you find easy, what you don't find easy, just anything that you would like to say. And thanks for watching, and hopefully you find this helpful. If enough people are seeming to find it helpful, then I will continue doing this particular exercise, and maybe we'll edit another chapter or two sometime. I found this pretty fun myself, and I haven't been cringing too much, which I think it helps me to think about this. Like, I'm not actually polishing this to try and publish it, which I think the last time I came through and did edits on this, I was. And so I got partway through, and then I was just threw my hands up and I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. But I think knowing that I'm doing this more as a teaching moment and even learning some things myself, I think that helps. So hopefully you found this helpful.